views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
And hello, welcome to Open. I'm your host, every Wednesday, Daren Jaime. I want you to know that 2018 was an incredible year for us here on the set of Open. And as I say every week, Open is a show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world right to you. We worked hard to keep our viewers informed with Bronx updates, the world of politics, finances, education, health, wellness, and so much more. And on this edition of Open, we're going to highlight the best of 2018. So we want you to stay with us because all this and much more is heading your way, because right now we're officially open. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Best of Open Wednesday. I'm Daren Jaime, and of course, you can stay connected to us here at Twitter, at BronxNet TV, and Facebook at Open BronxNet Television. Well, 2018 was a tumultuous year in politics. It may have been difficult to keep up with the POTUS's tweets, new policies, and issues, as well as the pertinent elections. But here on Open, we break down those political issues with our political experts. We take a look back at the world of politics here on Open. Lee Bond's our political analyst, and he joins us now in studio, and he's talking a little bit about the President's State of the Union address, and not just only the President's State of the Union address, but right now addressing the issue of a possible government shutdown that is looming possibly 8 days away. Now, Lee, let me ask you this. If the government does shut down, what does that mean basically for Americans?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, the bean counters have already come up with the fact that it costs $6 billion a week. That's what it costs to run this country in a shutdown mode. Now, you take 3 weeks, that's $18 billion. There's the wall right there, you see. So, no, there's going to be a significant blowback. Quite frankly, I'm thinking on both sides of the aisle if this happens, and I would recommend, as an analyst, as a strategist from the left side of the aisle, in the interest of full disclosure, that the Democrats would be well served if they would add a little something, another brick on that load, and the brick that would probably get them a lot of mileage and keep a lot more people on their side during this upcoming shutdown would be to address the U.S. defense budget. We're talking about almost $750 billion. $1 trillion for the 2018 budget alone. Donald Trump has requested, and it looks like he's going to get $80 billion increase in the military budget. Now, if you look at this globally, that nearly a third of $1 trillion being spent covers the defense budgets for the next 12 countries. Not only that, Russia's entire annual budget for defense is $80 billion. So if the Democrats had any sense and was thinking strategically, they would know that that's the issue to hang on the Republicans and get them to reduce that in order to bring more social programs to Americans.
Well, we're hearing out of North Korea the possibility of showing off missiles before the Winter Olympics. Some people have great concern about that, saying the U.S. needs to be adequately armed, given the fact of what we're seeing in North Korea. The president saying, listen, we need to increase money, make it more relevant, and increase our missile operation. You talked about Democrats having a voice. What would be the message the Democrats should be sending in the wake of all of this?
Well, you know what? Again, it goes back to how much they're spending. I don't think, if you could raise it to $1 trillion a year, and that will not deter the North Koreans from moving forward on their defense of utilizing nuclear weapons to keep the United States at bay. Again, this is old news. The North Koreans saw what happened in Libya. They saw what happened with Saddam Hussein in Iraq. As far as they're concerned, a nuclear arsenal is the only thing that will make sure that the United States keep their distance, and they're not going to stop. But if that's the measure that the United States is going to use to continue the escalation in the military budget, then we're going to be spending a lot of money, and there's going to be a lot of poor folks walking around here wondering where their next meal is going to come, because the social network, and that's one of the other issues that wasn't mentioned, is that the America's, what's the state of America's social safety net? And we're talking about seniors, we're talking about the young, we're talking about educating our youth. And if all of those issues aren't, well, none of those issues can be appropriately addressed as long as we're spending nearly $1 trillion a year for defense. Mm-hmm. And who is our enemy at this stage that would warrant or justify those kind of numbers? And one other point I'd like to mention is that as far as the military budget is concerned, with all of this money that we've spent, we've been in Afghanistan for almost 2 decades right now. We're spending a ton of money on a monthly basis to keep that operation going. And if you notice the last week, just 1 week alone, there's been so many bombings and killings in Afghanistan, specifically the capital, Kabul, mm-hmm. which is the most, supposedly the most secure city in the nation. And the Taliban is pretty much running wild. So where that money is going, how it's being spent, whether it's being spent effectively or not, is an open question, and Americans could use a lot of answers. Mm-hmm. But you know what, it's unfortunate because, you know, the fact of the matter is that they are young people and they're not really ready to vote yet. So Congress isn't going to really pay a lot of attention to them. Not only that, it is good to see them out there participating and getting themselves involved early on, but they're going to have some pretty difficult lessons to learn, and I think it's good that they're going to learn them early. The NRA decided to sue Florida. Florida passed some pretty significant gun control laws, nothing that you could really hang your hat on, but it was better than nothing. And the NRA, they got into the ear of the president, decided to convince him that raising the age limit to 21 for a long gun or the AR-15 wasn't a good idea. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what, I know who I was when I was 18 years old. You know, when I got into the car, it was 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. So the idea that you're going to put a weapon of that nature in the hands of a teenager is concerning. But for some reason, it seems as though the president is going along with the NRA. He's backing off of that issue. And the students out there are taking it to the streets, if you will. They're going to be, they went to Washington to protest. But I feel that in the long run, the lobbyists will win out. They always do. Disarming America is almost impossible. They're wedded to the Second Amendment. They're wedded to the idea of the right to bear arms. In fact, I wrote about this extensively at Issues Under Fire just a couple of days ago, and made a pretty strong case that the idea of public safety versus the right to bear arms, if it's a contest, the right to bear arms will win. This is America, after all.
Going back to our lead story, talk about DACA, of course, the DREAM Act, and looking, the deadline has passed. Where do we stand? What can we expect?
Well, you know, again, it's rather unfortunate because I wish I had some positive news to bring. But the president was out in California just the other day, yesterday, in fact, and he was touting the fact that we got the wall going. He was looking at some of the contractors' samples, if you will, and he's going full blast with this. And the other thing is that, again, Jeff Sessions decided to sue California because California is touting itself as a sanctuary state, not a city, but a state. San Francisco, all the way down to Los Angeles and San Diego, have decided to say, well, you know what, we're going to stand in opposition to ICE. In doing so, though, Sessions has called California out. In fact, the mayor of Oakland 2 weeks ago sounded the alarm to the Latino community to let them know that, you know, there's going to be an ICE raid coming up. Run, hide, find some places you can, you know, to protect yourself from these folks. And that's what brought on the suit from Jeff Sessions, because his idea is that California was standing in opposition to federal law. Federal law supposedly supersede state law, and we don't know how that's going to play out. But California's got a lot of dough, they got a lot of power. And if anybody could stand up to the federal government, it's California.
Yeah, I was going to ask your prediction pretty much looking at that.
Yeah, but I don't want to focus too much on California because the New York is pretty much in the same predicament, and they haven't been a focal point of the Justice Department yet. But I know a lot of folks here. In fact, some people that I know personally may not be documented, and those who aren't and were brave enough to bring their story to me have said that every time that they get in the car to drive, it's like they're worried. They don't want to get pulled over because even though the governor and the mayor has issued statements to say that the police shouldn't be able to ask what your status is, it's pretty much left up to the individual officer on that's stopping you, and if he or she has an issue with the undocumented population, they can make life miserable for you. So I don't really know where this is going to go, but I know it has fallen off the radar since March 1st, when that was a drop dead date for them to get something done. It seems as though that ICE is going on steroids. They're expediting the arrest at a lot faster clip. It may not show itself up in places like New York and California, but in those flyover states, things are happening, and they're not just going after the worst of the people. They're going after anybody who can't prove that they are in this country legally. And let's face it, if you're in this country without papers, if you didn't come here the right way, you have committed a crime, and that's all it takes for them to pick you up and detain you, and eventually the deportation follows. So there's going to be a lot of sob stories out there.
Let's talk a little bit more about what's going on in Washington. White House, Rex Tillerson is out. It seems like this is the latest in what I call the White House apprentice. I mean, every time you turn around, somebody else is fired, leaving. What can we say about Tillerson's firing? And then also, who's waiting in the wings?
Well, you know what? We did see this coming. There was a lot of rumors out there saying that Tillerson wouldn't make it long, especially after he actually was overheard by several people calling the president an effing moron. Not only that, the president actually said that he and Tillerson were never on the same page. In fact, they weren't even reading the same book. I made some notes here because some of the things that Tillerson was against the president doing. One of them was moving the U.S. Embassy to Tel Aviv. Moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. That turned out to be an international disaster. He also was against pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement. He was also against pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal, and a bunch of other stuff. You know, the list goes on and on. And one of the reasons why that one is probably the most difficult one to deal with is pulling out of the Iranian deal is because we're getting ready to enter negotiations supposedly with the North Koreans. If the North Koreans see that the United States is not honoring their bargain with the Iranians, why would they want to make a deal with the United States in any capacity?
I'll start on the national front. For you, any surprises? I mean, we thought particularly that the Democrats had a great chance of winning the House. They did win the House, but a little bit short on the Senate. Were we predicting? Did you predict that?
Well, most pollsters had predicted that the Democrats would take the House, but probably lose the Senate, and it turned out that they lost the Senate, and they lost an additional 2 seats. So the Republicans will have a firmer control of the U.S. Senate, I believe 53 seats to the Democrats' 45.
Yeah. And talk to me a little bit about this here, because we've got some gubernatorial states, and we've got Georgia that has not yet been conceded. Florida was a close race with Andrew Gillum and Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis just getting by there. Can we talk about that blue wave for a moment? Because a lot of people were concerned that yesterday was going to be this great blue wave. From your perspective, was it a wave or was it a ripple?
Well, if you're standing in New York City or Philadelphia or any large urban area that's Democratic, yeah, there was a blue wave. But if you're in Utah or North Dakota, there wasn't much of a blue wave. Those are solidly red states. Yes, turnout was up all across the nation. Record levels for midterm elections. 35 million early votes were cast across the United States. So voters are energized on both sides. The Democrats have the large cities and the large suburban areas as their strongholds, but it doesn't translate into the more rural, more sparsely populated states that are in Republican hands. You saw just how close things were in Florida, and how close things are in Georgia. Once you go outside the major urban areas and major urban counties, Democrats have trouble taking control. And in a number of congressional districts in New York that are flipping to Democrat, they're close. It's 50-49. 49-48. It's it's a very very close margin. I mean, my paper, the New York Post, said that the blue wave was actually a little more than a ripple.
The reality is that there's a lot of hypocrisy in politics, and it's one of those things that angers us moderates and guys that want to stand on principle. I know that we're more safe when we discuss instead of fight. I think it's when we speak and talk about our differences and come up with a solution. It's always better than tweeting about launching nuclear missiles at each other and whose button is bigger. So I think it's a good thing that we sat down and had a conversation. The problem is that I feel as if we're not principled in that when President Obama sat and created a deal with Iran to deal with that nuclear issue, my team went berserk and went crazy about the fact that President Obama had actually done that and actually met with conditions to make sure that Iran no longer possessed nuclear weapons. And I think that the Democrats were very happy. The Republicans were very upset. Now, it turns out that President Trump is meeting with North Korea, a brutal dictator. And although it was a good thing for that to have happened, the Democrats are not too fond of the idea of him having met with North Korea, and the Republicans are ecstatic about it. Mm-hmm. So the question is, at what point do we become principled citizens and say it's a good thing for Iran and North Korea to be on some sort of program where they no longer have nuclear weapon capabilities? So I think it was a good deed.
You know what, to broaden the argument just a bit, the United States really didn't get anything out of this. It was pretty much a really, really good photo op for the president, but it was even a bigger photo op for Kim Jong-un. Basically speaking, if you really think about it, the only thing that happened out of the whole thing was they went back to a recommendation that the Russians and the Chinese had put forth about 6 to 8 months ago. It was a freeze. Basically what they were saying is that if the United States would freeze their activities with regards to the war games, or as the president mentioned it, and then Kim Jong-un would cool it on the missile testing and nuclear bomb testing, then they can have an opportunity to sit down and talk. That's exactly what happened. Nothing more, nothing less. The United States actually acquiesced and said we're not going to proceed with any more of these provocative war exercises with the South and with Japan. And Kim Jong-un essentially didn't really give up much. When I took a look at the document that they signed, it wasn't an agreement. It was pretty much just...
Lee, but let's be honest. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but just think about this. Just a few months ago, we were talking about having missiles pointed at Guam and having missiles that could reach Chicago. I mean, that kind of talk and rhetoric is no longer happening either on Twitter or through North Korea's state media. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good thing when people in Chicago don't have to be in fear. People in Hawaii no longer have to worry about it. Guam doesn't have to worry about having missiles showered on them. I think that's a good thing. So all I'm saying is it's not perfect, but it's much better than where we were last year. I remember us getting into this before.
I would agree with you, but again, it comes down to the fact that this was no more than a show, because for number one, Donald Trump did not necessarily, and his sanctions did not necessarily bring North Korea to the table to talk. North Korea came to the table to talk because they were prepared to talk. They had already reached all of their goals with regard to their nuclear weapons. They were well prepared to sit down and speak with the United States as equals. So I'm not saying that it was a bad idea for them to talk, but it wasn't Donald Trump's idea. It was, to be absolutely honest with you, it was Moon Jae-in, the president of South Korea, who brought these two entities
Let me go from North Korea to Canada, cut in here for a minute. President reaching a lot of controversy with his comments that he made in regards to Trudeau. What are we to make now with the latest with Trudeau?
I have no idea what's going on anymore, to be honest. I haven't known actually since June 16th of 2015, when President Trump announced his campaign for president, you remember. I have no idea what to say. The Justin Trudeau in Canada are a friend of ours. You know, this idea that Canada is charging large tariffs to our dairy farmers, maybe one of the reasons why President Trump has taken upon himself to represent the interests of those that make up his bloc and support dairy farmers. But I highly doubt that's what's going on. I don't think that what he's doing with Canada and our allies makes any sense, especially to free market Republicans. It's counterintuitive. So I really can't even explain what's happening here. How you can blast Trudeau but say how talented Kim Jong-un is. I mean, he has to stop doing this because it's sending the wrong message.
Well, I would have to say that I do know what's going on. Prior to the president leaving to go on his trip to Singapore, he was pretty much a shill for Russia. He was actually inviting Russia back to the G7 as the G8. The reason why the Russians were kicked out of the G8 was because of what he did in Crimea back in 2014. Russia has been in the background doing everything that they can to undermine U.S. policies, both domestically and internationally. He's been interfering with the U.S. election in 2016. There's every reason to believe that he's going to be doing the same thing in the future. What Russia or Vladimir Putin's mission is to disrupt the United States base of allies, and that's what Donald Trump is actually doing.
That would
He's
be
going
real
after.
sinister.
Could you just wait a moment?
But we could have a conversation. It's not a monologue. We could both have a conversation.
Well,
Lee. I'm just saying that would be really nefarious. You may be right, but to think that look, I'm not a fan of this guy. But to think that he's out there plotting to end our Western alliances with Putin, I think it may be a little too far of a stretch. Don't you think? I mean,
no, not at all.
You think this
not
is
at all.
actually
I don't
happening?
think.
That's pretty interesting.
I'm watching the fact that no matter what Vladimir Putin has done to date so far, the president has yet to say one negative thing about him whatsoever.
I'm not defending
He is
Putin.
going
I'm just-
after.
it's weird.
He's going after NATO. He's trying to break up the NATO alliance. He's trying to break up the alliance between the G7. He's trying to break up the European Union. These are all of the things that Donald Trump, believe it or not, is all in agreement with Vladimir
Let me ask
Putin.
this question here. So since you met with North Korean president, how does this play out in the mind of voters? I mean, when you go to the voting booth and you hear and you see, here he is, he's met with Kim Jong-un, does it make any bit of a difference to those people who are voting come next election? Or even with midterms around the corner?
No, I think right now, solidly, as President Trump is concerned, I think he has a lock on the Electoral College vote. I think he does, and I think, Lee, when you look at the map, I think that's pretty fair to say. I think he'll lose the popular vote every time he runs. I mean,
Lee hasn't agreed yet.
But I know he does. I know he does, and I know you do too. The fact of the matter is that this makes him look good, and quite frankly, there's nothing that President Trump can do or say that will upset his base and his supporters. Nothing. There's absolutely nothing. I mean, they'll defend him to the death, and no matter what happens from now on, I think that you're going to have people supporting him no matter what. And this photo op and him bringing world peace is what it looks like, makes him look that much better to his base.
Well, a lot going on politically, certainly. Well, we got to take a quick break, and we'll be back with the best of Open 2018. Stay with us. We'll come right back right after this.
Once there was a boy who did the same thing again and again. One day, he was told he had autism. He got help and slowly learned how to live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
And welcome back to the best of Open. Securing finances and learning how to monitor your expenses, well, it can definitely be challenging. Here on Open, we invite experts who provide financial advice to our viewers. So let's check it out. You know, for those people who are in the crunch and still have not yet got their taxes done yet, what advice do you have?
I think the most important tax advice at the moment is finding the right tax preparer. You can have all the deductions you want, all the possible incentives from the government, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the person who's preparing your taxes. We're seeing an influx right now where there's a lot of fraud going on. What exactly does that mean? That means that the person who's preparing your taxes a lot of times does not have your best interest at stake for them. I've had a lot of cases recently where you would go in expecting a $2,000-$3,000 refund, and here they're telling you you're getting $8,000 back. How is that possible?
Right.
What ends up happening in reality is that, especially in the low-income communities, we have a lot of people who don't. This is their biggest amount of money that they're going to get in lump sum in the year. Right, so they'll go to Freddie, the neighborhood tax accountant. Freddie only opens his office from January through April. He makes as much money as he can, then he goes to the Caribbean for the next 8 monends. Leaves his rent paid and everything, but he preys on the small, the regular person that walks into his office and pays him X amount of money to get the maximum tax refund. That's illegal. If you go to a free a place that sponsored by the city, by the government, or even if you do your taxes online, you should get the same amount of a refund or for what you owe, you're expected to owe by a tax preparer. There should not be any discrepancies there.
So When you get there and you find this out, you see somebody that says, "Hey, I'm going to get about double what my refund is." Is that a red flag? Take my tax returns and go.
Yes, you should definitely walk away. If you know you only made $10,000 last year and you're getting a $15,000, $20,000 refund, you should really consider, reconsider who you're doing your taxes with. Unfortunately, the people that they deal with are, a lot of times they're not people that are very, financial savvy. So, there's like, oh wow, free money. And at the end of the day, a tax refund is not free money. This is money that the government actually owes you because you overpaid them. So, so it's just one of those things that we always have to look at. And I'm always telling my clients, listen, if you're going to their office and they're giving you X amount of money and you think it's too much, walk away, tell them, you know what, I gotta seek advice from someone else, and make sure you're getting the right numbers.
Holiday season starting back in November when people were doing their Thanksgiving shopping, all of those shopping days started. In Christmas, everybody probably went above their budgets, and so now January reality is going to hit in. So the thing is, more people are living on credit, and they're actually borrowing from their future to finance their present. That's essentially what's happening. And so we want to help people to actually get that under control so that come 2019, they will not be crying, but they'll be laughing to the bank. So first thing first, got to pay your bills on time. And that means making sure that you have a way of reminding yourself about how to get the bills paid. Make sure that there's an app. We have tools available to you that will help you to get that pop-up notification to say this bill is coming in 5 days, 7 days, so that you'll know when it's coming. If you pay your bills on time, your credit goes up by 35%. So that's a good reason to pay your bills on time.
Absolutely.
So,
and you got some tips here because there's some things you could do to kind of like control and really deal with your credit.
Well, the first one again was paying your bills on time.
Right.
That is huge, because then the next thing is the credit limit. Now we have what is called the balance to limit ratio. If you have, let's say, $1,000 limit on your card and you pretty much blew the limit in Christmas, you still can actually increase your credit by 30% by paying down 70% of what you owe. You don't have to pay off the full balance each month to get the credit up, but you want to show those credit agencies that you're able to manage your bills and your debt better. So 30% usage is the max. I know that years ago I used to hear people say 40 or 50% usage. It's a myth. You need to be 30% usage on your credit balances or less, and your credit goes up by 30%. So that's a very important thing. Now, one more, really quick. Someone called me yesterday. They have 7 different credit cards, and all of a sudden, all the bills are coming in, and they want to actually close some accounts down. I said, don't do that, because when you close an account, it's going to hit your score by another 15%. So if you open that account, manage the account. It's really important that people understand that once you sign that credit card statement to say, I'm going to take responsibility for this debt, it's really a contract. You have to actually do your part and do the right thing.
So you gave us some ways of really trying to build up your credit throughout the course of the year. Talk to people about the process, because people want it overnight. It doesn't happen overnight.
Great question. So there are some very unscrupulous people out there who are constantly offering pie-in-the-sky promises about credit. Now, there is a law called the Fair Credit Reporting Act. It was passed in the 1970s to protect consumers from people who actually are lying to them, including some of the credit agencies. More importantly, credit agencies cannot move faster than 45 days. The fastest anyone's credit could get fixed is 45 days, because the law says the credit agencies have 30 days to prove or verify whatever is on your report. And then they have another 15 days to send you a written letter with a report on a new credit report to let you know what they found in their investigation. So the most someone could get is 45 days. Now with our company, on average, it's 45 to 90 days. But no two people's credit reports are the same. It's almost like a fingerprint. You can't use someone else's results to predict one other person's results.
When we talk about this time of year, obviously people are doing better or trying to do better, talking about budget and saving money. Give us some tips for really setting that budget and saving that money the way that, in a way that's really going to get some results.
One of the best things that you can do to actually start to save and do a budget is to take money out of your account automatically. Put it on automatic, almost like doing automatic savings. So we have what is called an ACH or or direct deposit setup. So you have a bank, and you could even open lots of bank accounts online that have better interest rates than if you went to a boutique bank. So you go to get your automatic savings going. Whatever percentage you want to save, take it out of your account immediately and make believe that money doesn't exist. So whatever you would normally be using your money for, deduct that amount so that you could have it billed automatically, because one of the biggest things about money is that you have to develop that relationship with money as if it's something that you really truly love, because you have to pay yourself. If you're not paying yourself, you're actually a slave. It doesn't matter how much money you make. If you don't pay yourself, you're a slave to money. You're a slave to the boss or to the job. So that's the first goal in getting the finances on time, is pay yourself and make sure that you set a budget. One of the best things that people need to do is when they go to these stores like Walmart or Target or Home Depot, whatever, use cash and leave the credit card home. Why? Because if you know you have X amount of cash to use for whatever's on your list, there's no way you're going to go over your budget because you don't have more to spend, and that's it. And one more thing, remove the word spend out of your vocabulary, because money is a psychic entity. It actually does gravitate to those who treat it right. So therefore, don't spend money, use money. And then it will constantly come and multiply in your life if you use it correctly.
Life insurance, it's something that no one wants to talk about.
Right.
The average person, you talk to them about life insurance and they think, I'm going to die, this one's gonna die. And no one likes to think about that. No one likes to think about the possibilities that will happen in your life. And I tell people who come to me with those problems, the first thing that I tell them is this: is there someone in your life that you love? Are there things in your life that are important that will need to be taken care of even if you're not here? So that's the first thing when you're looking at a life insurance policy, is assessing your current situation, right? Who do you owe money to? Do you have student loans? Do you have this? Do you have that? Some people would argue, why would I care? I'm not here anymore. I would say if you have a mortgage, if you have a house, if you have properties, you need life insurance, because those that you will leave will be affected by your loss.
Right. So
how much money do you need? It will depend on your lifestyle. It will depend on who you owe money to, and the different assets you have or might not have. The next thing I would like to talk about, and in particular when it comes to life insurance, is do you get whole life or do you get term life? That's probably the number one question when you go online. What type of insurance do I get?
Well, what's the difference between whole life and term life?
Whole life means your entire life. That means you're going to pay a monthly premium for the rest of your life, unless you choose to pay it sooner. You might make payments ahead of time, and instead of taking your whole life to pay them, you might be able to pay it in 10 years instead of your entire life, an annuity. All right. So if you choose term life, that means that you're only choosing life insurance for a period of time. It's a temporary insurance. So like, let's just say you choose, I'm 30 years old and I only think I'm going to need, to get life insurance for the next 20 years. I'll get life insurance for the next 20 years. Usually, term life insurance is cheaper than whole life. You could understand why, because you're only doing it for a portion of your life, not for your entire life. At the end of the term insurance, you usually have the option to increase and either turn it into a whole life or increase the term for another 10 years, 20 years. But as you will, as those in the industry know, a lot of times the value, the amount of money you're going to have to end up paying is probably 2-3 times what you're paying right now for term life.
When it comes to breakthroughs in healthcare, prevention, and medical advice, we've invited some of the most knowledgeable experts in their respective fields to give our viewers the correct and most recent information. We take a look at some of that right now. Cancer. For people who don't know about colon cancer, give us a little bit of background.
So, as you've mentioned, it is the second leading cause of cancer deaths in the United States, and over 90% can be prevented by screening. Colon cancer arises from a polyp. Majority of colon cancers arise from polyps that are in the colon, and that can be prevented by screening tests. Now, interestingly, there was a survey done in the Bronx that was funded by National Cancer Institute that looked at various factors. One is that non-native English speakers are less likely to be screened than general population. Also, that we found that we need to talk about screening tests 5 years before we actually get screened. Also, African Americans are at higher risk for colon cancer than the remainder of population.
So looking at this now, obviously the word of awareness actually comes out. Is there any particular reason why we're finding that people aren't taking advantage of screenings? Is it the fact that they just don't know, or is there that fear factor? What are we talking about here?
Probably it's multiple things that you've mentioned. That's why we're here to encourage the screening. American Cancer Society recommends screening for anybody who is over age 50. There's several screening tests available for colon cancer screening. The most common one is colonoscopy that everybody I'm sure have heard about. It's performed by a gastroenterologist under anesthesia. A scope is placed into a rectum and is passed throughout the colon to the beginning of the colon, and as the physician passes the scope, they're able to remove the polyps as they see them or take biopsies of any lesions that look suspicious.
Stroke is an interruption of the blood supply to the brain, either due to a blockage of a blood vessel to the brain, such as in Jessica's case, or due to a rupture of a blood vessel causing bleeding within the brain. And it's important for everyone to be aware of the symptoms, which can include weakness or numbness on one side of the body, drooping of the face, slurring of speech, loss of vision in one eye or on one side, or a sudden change in balance. There's an easy way to try to remember the symptoms of stroke, and we use the term FAST, F-A-S-T. So F stands for face. If you ask the person to smile and you see that their smile is crooked, that could be one sign of stroke. Arm, you would ask the person to hold out their arm, and if it drops or is weak, or if the leg is weak as well, that would be another symptom. S stands for speech. If you ask the person to speak and their speech is slurred or doesn't make sense. And T stands for time to dial 911. So that's an easy way to remember the most common symptoms.
And when you talk about that time to dial 911, it is very important for people to dial within a specific amount of time, am I correct?
Absolutely. So the quicker, the better. The resources that we have to treat stroke, which can include either an IV, a blood thinner, a special type of blood thinner that we can only give in the emergency room immediately after start of stroke, or procedures that are done by catheter to try to remove the clot from the body, have to be done immediately to prevent further damage.
We have learned that it takes a community to address an issue, and it also it takes a community to be educated about the issues. So what we are doing is what we have this campaign to educate all New Yorkers about how to the signs of an overdose, but also how to prevent the overdose. And opioid overdose is one of the highest risk that exists in New York City, higher than car accidents and higher than, believe it or not, gunshots. And so we know that every 7 hours, there's one person dying in New York City of opioid overdose. Wow. So we are really dealing with a serious crisis.
And so as you talk about this crisis, educating the public, making people aware, how do people notice if somebody is on an overdose?
The signs of overdose, it's you will see the person start sweating, they start rocking, sometimes they're kind of unconscious, and you will see that they are not in a good space. Right. Most of them are kind of sleeping. So you check for pulse, and then you administer the Narcan.
And here you have in front of us, you have a demonstration kit in front of us.
Yes.
So explain this to me.
Okay, so after you identify the signs and you see the person that is going through an overdose, you open your kit and you put your gloves, because you want to make sure to protect yourself and protect the person of not putting any dirt on their mouth, I will say. And so you do that. We have alcohol in the pack. We have this card that identifies you that you have been trained and you know how to administer the Narcan. And this is the Narcan kit. And this kit, the good thing about it is that in the past it was an injection, so it took more time for you to prepare it. Currently, all we have to do is nasal, and you just spray it through the nose. And in the event that the person's still not responding, then you use this little protector for your mouth, and you give mouth to mouth. And then it's always recommended that you mark it, so that way you use the same side when you have to administer mouth to mouth resuscitation. We recommend that we always, even though we will administer the Narcan kit to reverse the overdose, that 911 is called. It is imperative for the emergency department comes and the person is taken to the emergency room to further assess what type of drug the person used. Currently, it's not only heroin and crack that people are using. They are using also, some of the drugs is cut with what is called fentanyl.
Right.
And the fentanyl, it's very, very dangerous. And depending on the level, the overdose will be quicker. My experience has been is that when you try to overdose certain individuals, they get very upset because you take the high away from them.
Right.
However, you are saving their lives, and you have to explain that to them. And they don't get it until after the effect, and they says, oh my God, I'm back here.
So Parkinson's disease is probably the most common neurodegenerative disorder. That is, it's one of these diseases that affects virtually everybody in time. It affects people of all ethnic groups. And the things that people would experience are tremor, significant slowness of movement, the inability to get up out of a chair, to walk, to stop, and stiffness, very significant rigidity of their arms and their legs. And over time, this can be really quite disabling and quite a burden to the patients and their families.
We know of two very well-known people, Muhammad Ali, of course, and Michael J. Fox, and both of those gentlemen have suffered with Parkinson's and of course, Muhammad Ali subsequently passing. But when we look at that, we see a very strong man, and then we see all of a sudden the inactivity of limbs and things like that. It's a progressive process, am I correct?
Correct. So it starts, first with some mild symptoms. Usually tremor is the thing that people first notice, and then over time, over a period of 2 to 5 years, you see the full disease picture. And so Muhammad Ali is a perfect example. And I would say he had fairly severe Parkinson's disease, and as you say, you could tell what the effect of this disease was on someone who's incredibly strong and exuberant and so on. And it really slowed him down significantly.
So let's talk about treatment, because there's some family members who are, who have relatives and have some questions about treatment. What is the treatment options available for those with Parkinson's?
So the first treatment is medical, and there are actually some very good medical treatments for it. And let me back up a little bit. So Parkinson's disease is caused by the loss of a certain type of neuron in the brain that generates dopamine. And so the medications remedy that. And they work for the most part, for 5, 10, 15 years. But then often they become less effective, and people start to have either worsening symptoms of the Parkinson's disease or very significant side effects of the medications. So you mentioned Michael J. Fox. And what you're seeing, his excessive movements are dyskinesias. They're actually a side effect of the medication. So some combination of those things is what we see. And then that's the time to consider doing surgery for Parkinson's disease.
And we have to take a quick break. We'll be back with the best of Open 2018 in just a few. And welcome back. Over the years here on Open, we've kept you informed on new and exciting educational opportunities, as well as some traditional programs. We'll see a little bit of what we shared with you over the past year.
So Jumpstart is a national early education nonprofit that trains college students to go into preschool classrooms in under-resourced communities. And we deliver a curriculum based on language literacy and social emotional development so that these kids go into kindergarten ready to succeed, like their more affluent peers, because we typically see that kids from under-resourced communities come into kindergarten a little bit more behind than their more affluent peers. So that's what Jumpstart is all about. And here in New York City, we partner with 10 colleges and universities to train those college students, one of them being Lehman College, and that's what Tiffany here does. So if you want to talk a little bit more.
Sure. So I've been in my role for the last 2 years here at Lehman College. So I train about 45 college students to go into classrooms in 2 partnering daycares we have in the Bronx. So I serve about 150 pre-K kids right now, and we focus on socio-emotional and literacy activities in the classroom to get children ready for kindergarten.
So give us a little bit about how the students interact and how students take part in this and their reaction.
So in the classroom, students do sessions. So sessions are comprised of circle time, we have read-alouds, we have dramatic play, manipulatives and puzzles. So we have books where our students are reading, and they might be showing a child how to hold a baby, how to cradle a baby. So we're teaching children from a very young age how to hold a child. So these are some of the socio-emotional skills that we're showing from an early age. So when they grow up, if they have younger siblings, they actually know how to hold a child and how to deal with the family dynamics.
What do you see is happening right now within the Latino community and press?
I think he reshaped pretty much everything. The way we think of journalism in this country has changed since the start of his presidency. Maybe even before that, he uses social media in a way that we were not used to. It became a sort of official channel. But for Latinos specifically, I think it's really delicate. It's a president that ran with the premise of combating somehow immigration. During the campaign, he criticized Mexicans, accused Mexicans in general of being rapists. We also had the S word commentary against Haitians, and this is something that really makes, I think, journalists face a new challenge. I'm a journalist, as you said, and for me, it's really a struggle, a weekly struggle to know how to portray facts in a way that is not offensive to my audience, at the same time not sugarcoating what the president says because he's president, which I don't know if you face too as a journalist, but it's something that sometimes the words are so strong and offensive that we sort of try to call them not lies but untruth, you know what I mean? Like choosing different words. And this is something that, because it's been a challenge for me, I wanted to use my students, which is something I do every semester, to learn, because they teach me so much. So in class we can discuss the role of Latino media, what they expect from journalists, and what they feel as readers of Latino media and of news media in general.
We have an outstanding group of young musicians in the Lehman College Student Jazz Ensemble, and I've been working in developing this ensemble now for, I think this is the 6th year. And they have opportunity to do a number of things. They're learning the vocabulary of jazz improvisation, but they learn that improvisatory vocabulary in through the lens of many different styles of music. We play everything from of course, jazz and traditional jazz and Latin music, some pop-oriented music, sort of all of the above, Brazilian music. And they're forming really strong musical relationships now as undergraduates that they will carry with them into their career. So being able to perform at these various college events, such as the one we have tonight, gives them an opportunity to experience pretty much every side of the music profession, from televised performances that we do in partnership with BronxNet during the Pacheco Festival each fall, and everything from cocktail parties and sort of background music to semi-featured events. So I'm very proud of these students. They do well.
And there's a lot of opportunity for students. And talk to us about some of the possibly the career options that are available in music.
Well, it's a real wide stroke of the brush. There's everything from performing and composing, arranging. I mean, if you either flip dials on your television or do a lot of web searching or web surfing, you're going to find music everywhere. And just click through the channels: music, commercial, jingle. Everything is there, and someone's creating this music. And so with the expansion of all the digital opportunities and digital media out there, with that have come opportunities that have evolved from the old school way of doing things into a whole different experience that is maybe overwhelming in some ways, but has so much promise and opportunity for especially our young people coming up now.
So share with us a little bit, Linda, about the English as a Second Language program.
Well, it's a fast-growing program, and it's a customized program. So students take a placement test, and then we put them in appropriate levels. And it's all about communication. And we teach our students to have confidence and to state their opinions and to meet their next goal, whatever that may be.
And so, Anna, tell us a little bit. You're a part of the program. How do you like it?
So I'm a part of the program. I am enjoying it a lot because I'm improving my English, improving the English skills, how to write, how to grammar, everything about the English skills.
And Noelia, for yourself?
I'm from Spain. I'm studying English for 5 months here in Lehman College. And I really like the program because I can improve my grammar, my writing, And also my speaking, because we have a lot of classmates and we talk a lot every day, and we all are improving so much.
And it's a diverse group of people that you have.
From everywhere. It's like the United Nations.
So give us this about the program. How long does it last, and what's required of students?
Okay, so it's 15 weeks in a semester, and we study reading and writing and grammar in the morning for 2.5 hours, and then in the afternoon we have listening and speaking. We look at TED Talks, we listen to podcasts, we use newspaper articles and magazine articles and music and literature. And we talk about it, and we have a lot of discussions, And I learn a lot. I learn a lot from them because they teach me about their culture, and I get to see what their perspective is on American culture.
We went to one school in the South Bronx and met this wonderful principal, Julia Bally. And when we were talking to her about working with a young man in a school, she said, look, I hear in your slogan you say no man left behind, but what about the females? What about the young girls? No woman left behind. And she said, I certainly want you guys to come here and work with the students, but we certainly have to get the young girls on board as well. And for the first time ever right there at BCC Prep, the Aim High Empowerment Institute is not only working with young men, but also working with young women as well.
So you told them, can't forget about the ladies, huh?
I told him that's the only way we can do business.
That's it. All right.
Has to be the entire community.
Well, talk to us about ladies and what do you feel the ladies need?
Well, they need the exact same things. A lot of the times, a lot of the resources are definitely, the resources that are available are for our young men. And for very, very good reasons. I totally and completely agree, but our females have the exact same deficits. And so I believe in equity across the board. And so one of the things, the conversations we had in April of last year, I said we can definitely do business. And we spent spring break trying to roll out a plan, and they were very diligent in working with the college campus to put an entire program together for our females, because they have the exact same challenges in the communities that the men do. But we always consider the females are going to be more resilient, they're going to figure it out. And a lot of the times that's not the case, that's not how it happens.
The community has become more involved in the Bronx throughout the year 2018. Here's a look back at some programs that we discussed right here on our show. Homelessness, it's a big situation that we've got going on in New York City, but you guys have been really on the front line in terms of providing housing too. And so share with us a little bit about Breaking Ground.
Sure. Breaking Ground is an organization, a mission-based nonprofit that provides housing and other related services to homeless and other vulnerable New Yorkers. There are 3 ways that we pursue our mission. One is through street outreach, so like Bronx Works, Breaking Ground is responsible for providing street outreach services to all of Brooklyn, all of Queens, and about 30% of Manhattan. We also have about 300 beds of safe haven units. We provide shelter for street homeless people to help them come in from outside. And we are a developer and operator of permanent housing. Here in the Bronx, our first new development was in 2010. We actually, it's a supportive housing program, and Bronx Works is the social service provider at that location. In 2015, we opened a building on Boston Road that was funded using Medicaid redesign funds, so capital funds designed to support locations where we can house people who are high Medicaid users. All of our supportive housing has on-site social services, so we have psychiatry on-site, medical services on-site, job training on-site, crisis intervention counseling. All of our supportive housing is mixed, so half of the units approximately are for special needs tenants and the other half are for community residents. We were very excited just about a month ago to open our first new straight affordable project in the Bronx on Park and 178th Street called Park House for 248 families.
So the Los Angeles Society is basically me. I started it in 2011. It's an organization that that the universe allowed me to put together from my own personal story, from growing up as a homeless teenager from the ages of 16 to 21 and moving 21 times from pillow to post. So I always told myself if I ever got to the position where I can give back that I would, and I started Los Angeles Society. And
so,
here we are.
And a great organization is doing great work for homeless. So talk a little bit about your mission and how you carry it out.
So our mission is pretty much to just provide a safe haven for youth not to experience the same thing that Sadia, went through. We noticed that today our youth, they just need a place, an avenue to express themselves, to just feel loved and appreciated. There's a lot, just to hold them in a space to where they can create, and not having that creates that energy going in another route. So we definitely want to direct that energy in a positive way.
Well, we're kicking off another season, if you will, of responsible fatherhood, trainings, events, counsel, those types of things. And we're going to take it up another level, if you will, this year because we were so successful in the past few years. Get a little bit deeper. We still have a lot of families out there where the father is not participating at all in the raising of the children. And it's not only hurting the family, but the community at large. And most importantly, it's hurting him. It's putting him in a deep hole, emotionally, spiritually, and we're just not going to have it anymore. We're not having it in the Bronx or the citywide period. So the coalition and Deeds-Driven Dads is going to add some new things to the game roster, if you will, and push it forward.
And so when we talk about really engaging fathers, you do a good job of really, meeting them where they are and dealing with them. What are some of the challenges that you're finding with some of these fathers in terms of involvement and family and really making that connection?
Well, our biggest challenge is still, and probably will be for quite some time, is fathers taking on the responsibility, maturing, if you will, particularly in understanding there is no turning back. You've been blessed with these children, and in many ways, that's your way out. That's going to give you the discipline and the sacrifice, the build your character that oftentimes is not there when you're just by yourself, when you're just out there in the wind, living day to day, which many of our brothers are doing. But once you have the children, that gives you a purpose, that gives you some type of structure. So we're really encouraging the fathers, don't shy away from it. It isn't a burden, it's a blessing. But we're really gonna have to show them how it's done, as we've been doing for many years. Raising children, it's not an easy task, but it's also not impossible as long as you prioritize and just do it day by day.
Right. And when we talk about these fathers, you work with them. There's expectations that you have of them.
Yes.
Share with us a little bit about the expectations that you put on fathers and then the follow-up that you do to help them to meet those expectations.
Well, our first one, and it's the pledge that we have them read, is to prioritize their children above all things. That's what you do. That's the only thing that truly matters at this point, the only thing that will last. So I get the fathers to, of course, take the pledge and understand what they're pledging to. And once they raise that hand, I swear to God, then we go ahead and show them the day-to-day operations. And when I say that, we've been doing this for quite some time. We're going to do a lot of dishes. We're going to wash all the laundry. That house is going to be tight. You're going to know all their friends and their friends' families. You and the teacher are going to be almost married. That's your partner. Right. And those types of things. You prioritize your family. Because we know this to be certain, once you do that, skies part for you. Things start to clear up. You get opportunities. People start to recognize that, wow, you're a responsible, not only father, but a responsible man. And that kind of opens up a lot of doors for our fathers that, until such time as they do that, seem to be closed.
And that's all for our look back at 2018. And as always, if you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the Recablecast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum's Channel 67. Now, if you have Verizon Fios, that's Channel 33, or anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. For all of us here on the set of Open, I'm Daren Jaime. We look forward to keeping you informed as we roll into 2019. Make sure to keep this channel wide open. Take care, and God bless.